It started on a quiet evening in Wilmington, North Carolina. I had just set a kettle on the stove, waiting for the faint whistle that marked the only normal routine I had left since Helen passed away. The house had grown too large without her, the silence stretching across every hallway like a shadow that refused to leave. Then came the banging, loud, violent, a fist rattling my front door hard enough to jolt the frames on the wall. "Open it!" a woman screamed. "Open the door now!" My daughter-in-law, Kira. I froze in the center of the living room, staring at that door like it might explode inward. It wasn't the first time Kira raised her voice at me, but it was the first time she brought company. My son's voice followed. "Dad, let us in!" There was a thud, metal against metal, sharper, heavier than a fist. I knew that sound. Years earlier, as a federal investigator, I had heard tools crack open padlocks in evidence raids. And now, the same scrape and clack echoed against my door. I stepped toward the peephole, and there he was, my son, Elliot, holding a pair of bolt cutters. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you are watching from. It helps more than you know. Kira was right beside him, eyes wild with righteous fury, gripping his arm like she was urging him to snap the lock and storm inside. "Cut it," she hissed. "He's stalling." My breath caught. They weren't here out of worry. They weren't checking on me. They wanted inside, by force if needed. Even through the narrow glass, I could see the glint of fear in my son's expression. He wasn't leading this. He was following. And Kira, well, Kira had always been bold when she thought she'd already won. I unlatched the security chain but didn't open the door. "What are you doing?" I called out. "You can't just—" "We have paperwork," Kira interrupted from the other side, her voice now dripping with practiced politeness. "Legal authority, remember? This house is not safe for you anymore. Paperwork." I knew exactly what she meant. Earlier that week, Elliot had shoved documents under my nose, a petition claiming I was no longer fit to manage my own affairs. They had found a doctor, one willing to sign off on a diagnosis I didn't have. Memory loss, decline, risk to myself, a lie wrapped in concern. "You sign or we take over," Kira had said, eyes sharp as glass. I refused, and now here they were, bolt cutters in hand, proving how right I was to deny them. The kettle screamed from the kitchen. Steam fogged the windows behind me. I ignored it. "I am perfectly capable," I shouted through the door. "And you are trespassing." Kira laughed, a harsh, condescending sound. "Capable? You are a grieving old man who can't even answer the phone half the time." Elliot flinched at her tone, but he didn't put the cutters down. "You're lucky we came," she continued. "If the court takes guardianship, you'll end up in a state facility. We're trying to help you keep your dignity." "By breaking into my house?" I fired back. There was a pause. Then Kira said the quiet thing out loud. "We need access to the safe." The safe. The documents. The insurance policies. The deed. My heart thudded against my ribs like it wanted to escape. I backed away from the door just as the bolt cutters clamped on the deadbolt. Metal groaned under pressure. They were really doing it. Elliot muttered, "Kira, I don't know. Do you want your inheritance or not?" She snapped. "Cut it." Inheritance. So that was it. They weren't here because they feared losing me. They were here because they feared losing what I owned. I exhaled slowly, anger washing through me. Not the explosive kind, but cold, steady, calculating. I reached for the drawer where I kept something more powerful than any lock. Evidence. Printed emails. Financial statements. A backup drive. Everything I needed to prove this wasn't concern. It was conspiracy. The cutters snapped again. The door frame shook. The weak point of the lock cracked. They thought I was cornered. They thought grief made me blind. They thought bolt cutters could break me. But they didn't know something vital. I have spent my entire career exposing people who underestimated me. The lock groaned again, seconds from giving. And as splinters began to fly from the door, I realized something far more terrifying. This break-in wasn't their idea. Someone else was pulling the strings. The final snap of metal against metal echoed through the hallway like a gunshot. The deadbolt didn't fall away, not yet, but it surrendered, a hairline fracture splitting right through its center. One more squeeze of those bolt cutters and the door would swing open. Kira's voice cut through the wood. "Last chance, old man. Open it before we do. I backed up to the kitchen doorway, holding my folder of evidence tight to my chest. I had printed everything. Bank transactions I never approved, signatures that didn't look like mine, and emails to an attorney I had never met. But the most damning piece wasn't paper. It was a simple text message I had taken a photo of. A message from Kira to someone named Ledger. He's alone. The safe should be easy. Ledger. Not a name I recognized, and not a name I planned on forgetting. The bolt cutters clamped again. A chunk of wood splintered free. I took a breath. My voice came out steadier than I felt. If you break into this house, it becomes a felony, not incompetence, not guardianship. Felony. Kira laughed. Good luck proving it. I already have, I said, staring at the screen of my phone. This entire incident is being recorded. It wasn't. Not yet. But she didn't need to know that. The banging stopped. Silence. Then Elliot's voice. Soft. Quivering. Dad, please just come with us to the lawyer's office. We can talk. Talk. Such a small word for the end of a life. I walked to the front door, stopping only when I stood a few feet back from it. I didn't open it. I just spoke low, calm, and controlled, like I had practiced my entire career. You are trying to force me into guardianship. You forged documents to do it. I have proof. If you walk away now, I won't file charges. If you break in, you destroy your future, not mine. Kira's reply was venom. You don't get to threaten us. You're confused. You can't even manage your medication schedule. My prescriptions are automated, I said. Try again. There was a rustle, a whisper. Elliot's hand lowering the cutters. Kira, he murmured. He's lying, she snapped. He has been spiraling since Helen died. He's not safe here. My chest tightened. Hearing my wife's name spoken like ammunition felt like a knife twisting between my ribs. I grieved, I said. I didn't collapse. There's a difference, and that was the truth. I had nights where I fell asleep in her armchair holding one of her scarves just to remember the lavender scent she used. I had mornings where I forgot to eat because sitting alone at the table felt like betrayal, but I never lost myself. I never let go of who I was. Kira banged the cutters against the door one more time. That's it. We're getting in. That's when I heard another voice. Faint at first, then growing clearer. Sir, you all right in there? I turned. Through the side window, I saw a figure approaching up my driveway. A neighbor, Mr. Larkin. He lived 3 houses down, always out mowing his lawn or working on some project in his garage. He wasn't the type to interfere, but he was the type to notice. Kira's tone shifted instantly. Act natural, she hissed. Elliot stumbled over his words as Mr. Larkin reached the porch. Evening, Larkin said, eyes narrowing at the bolt cutters. Elliot shoved the tool behind his leg, too slow to hide it. We were just, fixing something. Kira forced a smile so strained it could snap. We're helping Dad. The lock jammed. Larkin didn't buy it. Funny, he said. From inside it sounds more like you're trying to break in. Inside I exhaled. The timing. The luck. The grace of it. Dad? Elliot called again, but the bravado was gone. Can you at least unlock it so we can show Mr. Larkin? No, I said simply. Larkin's voice hardened. You two should leave. Now. Kira muttered something under her breath. A hiss of frustration and curses. Then the heavy clatter of the bolt cutters hitting the porch planks. This isn't over, she spat. Elliot lingered. For a moment I thought he might apologize. Might back down. Might remember I'm the one who taught him how to ride a bike, how to fix a flat tire, how to tie a tie. He didn't. They left. Tires screeching, engine roaring into the night. When the street fell silent, I finally unlocked the door and opened it just enough to see Larkin standing there, arms folded. Call the sheriff, he said. Tonight. I shook my head. Not yet. Why not? They tried to break in, that's criminal. I know, I said, but I need them to come back. I need them to make the next move. Larkin studied me, eyes narrowing. You've got a plan, don't you? I do, I replied. He nodded once and stepped back. If you need help, you come get me. I will. He headed down the driveway. I closed the door, re-engaged the locks, even the fractured one, and leaned back against the wood. My hands shook then. Only then, not from fear. From adrenaline. From rage. From clarity. I walked to the study, opened the safe, and pulled out a flash drive etched with one word. Ledgers. Not ledger. Ledgers. Plural. The message I saw earlier wasn't a name at all. It was a category. A network. Someone was collecting people like me. And as I plugged that drive into my computer, I realized the bolt cutters weren't the real threat. They were just the symptom of something much larger, something coming for me whether my door held or not. I stared at the word on the flash drive for a long moment before plugging it in. Ledgers. Not a person, a system, a record, a trail. The last thing I expected to find in my own safe was evidence that someone had been planning around me, not just against me. The drive booted up with a low hum. My old desktop, a stubborn machine I'd kept for sentimental reasons, took its time. When the folders finally loaded, the screen split into names, numbers, and documents. At first glance, it looked like accounting, but the deeper I scrolled, the more it felt like a spider web. Columns labeled with ages, diagnosis claims, estimated estate value, and status. Status was divided into two labels. Acquired, pending. My stomach lurched. These weren't investments, these were people. Widowers, retirees, isolated adults, most over 60, some younger, with estates worth enough to make them pray. Acquired didn't mean financial transactions, it meant guardianships, property transfer, medical power of attorney. Legally binding imprisonment. My cursor hovered over a familiar name. Eleanor Briggs. Acquired. I sat back. That name had come up once before, a woman from church who vanished from the community center months ago. Everyone assumed she moved to be closer to her daughter, but apparently her estate had moved somewhere else entirely. I scrolled. Under pending. There it was. Edwin Marsh. My name. Estimated estate value, projected liquidation, caretaking fees, facility cost breakdown. It read like a financial plan, and except I was the product. A crash echoed from outside. The porch. I flinched, heart jolting like a startled animal. But when I checked the window, it was just the wind knocking over a stack of gardening pots. Nothing more. For now. I returned to the screen. A subfolder labeled Contacts revealed phone logs, email threads, and appointment schedules tied to one office. Harrow Wellness Group, Greenville, North Carolina. A private care consultancy. I had never heard of it, but Kira had. The documents showed two signatures connected to me. One was forged, my own. The other belonged to a physician I had never met, Dr. Marin Kael. My pulse hammered in my ears. I had seen cases like this when I was an investigator. Elder exploitation, financial entrapment, coerced guardianship. I had never imagined I would become the cautionary tale. A notification popped up, an incoming email. From Harrow intake subject, final assessment schedule update. I hesitated, then opened. It in-home evaluation rescheduled. Confirmation expected. Report will proceed regardless of cooperation. Contact Kira for entry arrangements. Cooperation. Entry arrangements. Kira wasn't acting alone. Elliot wasn't acting with clarity. Someone had told them that if I didn't comply voluntarily, they could force the issue. Sitting there in the glow of the computer, the kettle on the stove still cooling from earlier, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to admit. They weren't doing this because they hated me. They were doing this because someone convinced them it was necessary, and that was even more dangerous. I printed everything. 2 copies of every file, then 2 more. One set went inside a sealed envelope. The second set went into a metal cookie tin and straight into the back of the freezer. The third set, the important one, I slid between the pages of Helen's old gardening book as if her memory itself could protect it. By the time I finished, it was well past midnight. The house creaked under the weight of wind and age. I checked the locks again, twice. Then I stood in the living room looking at the door they nearly forced open, imagining the bolt cutters sinking into the cold metal like a promise. I needed help, not police. Not yet. Not without understanding the scale of what I was stepping into. If I came in blind, I'd look paranoid. If I came in angry, I'd look unstable. I needed someone who understood the law without being swallowed by it. There was a name in my phone I hadn't dialed in 3 years. A friend I lost after Helen died. Someone who offered help then. And I pushed him away because grief made me stubborn. Reverend Maddox. Not a priest, not a therapist. A former attorney who traded courtrooms for a pulpit after a nervous breakdown almost took his life. If anyone knew how systems like this twisted good people into weapons, it was him. My thumb hovered over the call button. Before I could press it, motion flickered outside. Headlights, slow, deliberate, a vehicle I didn't recognize. It idled at the end of my driveway, engine low and patient, like it had all the time in the world. Someone inside, watching, waiting. The bolt cutters were gone. But the message remained. They would be back. Not for the door. For me. I stepped away from the window and finally pressed call. The dial tone rang once, twice. A click. "Ed?" a voice said, groggy but alert. "It's late. Is everything all right?" I swallowed. "No," I said, "and I think I need your help before I disappear. Because if a consultancy in Greenville could orchestrate this, then Harrow Wellness Group wasn't a facility. It was a hunting ground." Reverend Maddox lived on the outskirts of Wilmington, in a converted rectory behind a brick chapel with stained glass windows that caught moonlight like fractured memories. I hadn't been there since Helen's memorial service. The gravel crackled under my tires as I pulled into his drive just past 2 in the morning. He met me at the porch, already dressed. Either he slept in his clothes or he had expected this. "You look terrible," he said, not unkindly. "I've had better evenings." He ushered me inside. The chapel smelled like cedar oil and old hymnals, not the cloying sweetness of incense, but something real. Grounded. He locked the door behind us, and I couldn't tell if it was out of habit or strategy. "What's going on?" he asked as we sat in his office. "You sounded like you were being hunted." I placed the envelope of documents on his desk. "I think I am." He opened it, scanning the records with a practiced eye. Even after leaving the law, his mind still moved like an attorney. Structured, surgical, ruthless without being cruel. "You're sure these are forged?" Maddox asked. "I never signed those evaluations, never met that doctor. And the bolt cutters weren't a metaphor." He nodded slowly. "Guardianship abuse, estate targeting, medical coercion. This is organized, Ed. Not just family ambition or grief gone rotten. This is a template." He tapped the name at the top of the page. "Harrow Wellness Group. Never heard of them," he muttered. "You have now." He stood, went to a cabinet and retrieved a battered laptop. It was covered in sermon notes and old stickers like a relic from a past life. But when he powered it on, he moved with purpose, typing like someone who had once filed injunctions at 3 in the morning. Within minutes, he found it. Harrow Wellness Group wasn't a facility. It was a network connected to 6 other organizations scattered across North Carolina. Counseling centers, assisted living consultants, financial planning advisors, all sharing board members with familiar last names. And one of those names was on a folder Elliot had tried to get me to sign. Kael. As in Dr. Marin Kael. I felt the room tilt. Not from dizziness, from clarity. Helen had once mentioned that name after her chemo sessions. Said a woman from the wellness board had been asking questions about me. About our finances, about our plans. I thought she was bored and making conversation. Now I wasn't so sure. Maddox leaned back in his chair. "So, what's your plan? Run, hide, fight?" I exhaled. "Expose them." "With what?" "This," he gestured at the envelope. "This is evidence, yes, but it's circumstantial. You need something that links Harrow to your son, to your daughter-in-law, to the forged paperwork." "I know," I said, "which is why I need to go there." He stared at me like I had grown a second head. "To Greenville?" "No," I said. Before that, I reached into my coat and pulled out the slip of paper I had grabbed from the safe. A handwritten note. I hadn't recognized the handwriting until tonight. Ledger. Appointment. Tuesday 11. Front office access. Bring the key. Elliot's handwriting. The note wasn't for someone named Ledger. It was a reminder to access the Ledger files. "They never planned to talk to me," I said. "They planned to take my key. I'm guessing they didn't expect me to still have it." Maddox stood so abruptly his chair scraped. "You need to go to the sheriff." "Not yet," I said. "If I report this now, they'll spin it as confusion or paranoia. Guardianship petitions move fast. Faster than criminal cases. If I misstep once, they win." Maddox rubbed his temples. So you want to walk directly into the lion's den? I've prosecuted worse lions. And the bolt cutters? He asked. What happens when they bring something sharper next time? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because headlights flashed through the chapel window, bright, direct, too slow to be passing by. The gravel outside crunched again. A car door shut. Maddox turned off the lamp. Were you followed? He whispered. I don't know. The porch creaked. Footsteps. Then, 3 loud knocks. Kira's voice muffled through the wood. Edwin. We need to talk. Maddox's eyes widened. She found you? No, I said. She followed me. The bolt cutters weren't visible through the glass, but the shadow of them was. And as her silhouette raised a hand to knock again, I realized something chilling. Kira wasn't afraid of what I knew. She was afraid of what I might prove, and someone behind her was more afraid than she was. Maddox motioned for me to stay still, his hand hovering near the edge of the curtain. The knocking persisted. Steady, controlled, not frantic like before. Controlled knocking meant confidence. Confidence meant she thought she still had leverage. Kira's voice filtered through the wood again. Edwin, please. We were wrong to come like that earlier. We just want to talk. It was the most composed I had ever heard her. No venom, no condescension, just a thin veneer of sincerity stretched over something jagged. Maddox leaned close to me and whispered, You answer that door, you hand them the narrative. I know, I whispered back, but I also knew something he didn't. I stepped forward just enough to be heard, not seen. What changed? I said, voice loud enough to carry. A pause, then, we spoke to someone. We know you've been through a lot. We want to help, not hurt you. A lie. Obvious as cheap perfume. Who did you speak to? I asked. Kira hesitated. I could hear her swallow through the door. Dr. Kael. The room went still. Maddox mouthed the name back to me, eyes wide. Kael wasn't just involved. Kael was coordinating. And what exactly did Dr. Kael tell you? I asked. That you're confused, Kira replied, voice trembling now. That the grief made things worse. That you're making dangerous decisions and that if we don't intervene soon, the courts will intervene, I repeated. Like bolt cutters on a family home? Silence. Then the worst kind of reply. We thought we were doing the right thing. Maddox shook his head, mouthing, They're not alone, and he was right. I saw it through the curtain, the faint white reflection of headlights behind hers. A second car. Someone else waiting. Someone she didn't come here with earlier. You need to leave, Maddox called out. A different voice answered. A man. Calm. Rehearsed. Mr. Marsh, we would like to schedule an in-home assessment at your convenience. Tonight, if possible. Maddox stiffened. That wasn't Kira's attorney. That wasn't a neighbor. That was a consultant. A field agent. Kira was the bait. The professional was the hook. No, Maddox said. This isn't a legal visit and you know it. We are authorized, the voice replied. Show proof, Maddox challenged. Footsteps retreated. Whispers. Papers shuffled. Kira's voice called out, We're coming in if you don't open the door. Maddox stepped closer to me. They're escalating because they're losing control. That's good for us, but only if you don't give them a foothold. My phone buzzed. A text. From Elliot. Dad, please. You're scaring us. Let's talk. I don't want to lose you. The words cut deeper than the bolt cutters ever could. Because I believed him. I believed my son was caught in something he never understood the full shape of. Kira wasn't evil. She was ambitious. Kael wasn't compassionate. She was calculated. And Elliot was the kind of man who needed someone to tell him what was right. He had chosen the wrong voice. Maddox grabbed a notepad and started writing fast. When he turned it toward me, there were just 2 words. Recorded admission. Then the plan clicked into place. I dialed Elliot. He picked up instantly. Dad, you said you want to talk, I said, loud enough for the door to pick up the sound. Then admit what you're here for, Kira hissed. Don't! Elliot's voice wavered. We just need access to the safe. For the documents. What documents? The estate transfer, Kira snapped. Stop talking. But he didn't. The ones Dr. Kael said would help the petition. The ones about the facility, the guardianship transfer. Dad, please, she said, if we didn't do it now, the court would take you somewhere worse. And there it was. Not forged. Not coerced. Spoken. Out loud, Maddox mouthed, "Enough," and gestured for me to hang up. Instead, I took it further. "Who told you to bring the bolt cutters, Elliot?" Silence. A shuffle. Then, "Kira." "And who told Kira?" "Kael." Maddox was already snapping photos of my screen for timestamp proof. I ended the call. The knocking stopped. Footsteps retreated, doors slamming, engines starting. They were running. Maddox locked the door. "You got them. You got them admitting intent." "It's not enough," I said. "Not yet. I need the link to Harrow. I need Kael on record." Maddox sat heavily. "Then what next?" "They wanted a home visit," I said, picking up my coat. "So I'm going to give them one." "Where?" he asked. I looked down at the paper in my pocket. The appointment reminder. Greenville, Tuesday, 11. At Harrow Wellness Group. Maddox stood. "You can't go alone." "I won't," I said. "Not if you come with me." He hesitated. A long moment. Then, "For Helen," he said. "For Helen," I repeated. We stepped outside. The night air smelled like storm clouds and pine, the scent of something breaking open. I locked the chapel door behind us, feeling the weight of that click settle into my bones. The road to Greenville waited, because if they thought bolt cutters could break through my door, they had no idea what I could do with the law on my side and vengeance in my heart. The drive to Greenville took nearly 2 hours, and every mile felt like stepping deeper into someone else's plan. Maddox stayed quiet, hands folded, eyes fixed on the road ahead like the scriptures he used to preach from. I could tell he was praying in his own way, not for salvation, but for clarity. Harrow Wellness Group sat at the end of a cul-de-sac surrounded by manicured lawns and pristine hedges. The building looked more like a boutique hotel than a medical consultancy. Polished brick, tinted windows, cursive lettering above the door. No bars, no locks. The trap wasn't physical. It was administrative. As we approached, I saw a woman standing by the reception desk through the glass. Tall, composed, tailored suit. Dr. Marin Kael. Her posture was relaxed. The confidence of someone who believed the outcome had already been written. Maddox paused just outside the door. "You're sure?" he asked. "No," I said, "but I can't let them write my ending for me." We stepped inside. Kael's expression changed only slightly. A flicker of recognition, a smile too soft to be genuine. "Mr. Marsh," she greeted. "We were expecting you for an assessment tomorrow. You're early." "Call it initiative," I said. She motioned to chairs as if we had arrived for coffee, not confrontation. "Please sit. We can begin." "No," I interrupted. "We're not here for an assessment. We're here for accountability." Maddox placed the envelope of printed evidence on the desk. Kael didn't look at it. "Your children are worried," she said, voice like sweetened poison. "It's natural to resist care when grief distorts one's perception of reality." "Reality?" I echoed. "Let's talk about reality." I pulled out my phone and tapped record. "Reality is my son admitting you told them to bring bolt cutters. Reality is forged documents with your organization's letterhead. Reality is this entire network targeting people like me. Alone, grieving, worth something on paper." Kael's smile thinned. "You misunderstand. We merely provide pathways for families who can't manage difficult transitions." "By manufacturing incompetence?" Maddox snapped. "By coercing signatures? By weaponizing medical evaluations?" Kael stood, smoothing her blazer as if brushing off dust. "You two should leave, before this becomes embarrassing." "For who?" I asked softly. Behind her, a side door opened. A security guard stepped out, not in uniform, but positioned like he had been waiting. No weapon visible, just presence, intimidation by posture. Kael lifted a hand, palm up. "This can still be amicable. If you accept evaluation and guardianship voluntarily, we can ensure your son retains access to your estate. You won't be removed from your home. Not immediately, at least." Maddox inhaled sharply. "Not immediately?" Kael tilted her head. "Transitions must be gradual to avoid distress. You of all people should understand. Control is an illusion we cling to when the world no longer recognizes us." I stepped closer. So close I could smell the sterile citrus of her perfume. "I recognize myself just fine," I said. "And I remember everything." I pulled a second flash drive from my coat, identical to the first. Kael's eyes darted to it. Just once. Enough. This contains every file you tried to hide, I said. Every ledger, every client, every estate you liquidated under the guise of care. Kael's mask slipped. The faintest crack. You can't prove those are ours, she said. I already did, I replied. The metadata matches your internal timestamps. Maddox confirmed it. Maddox held up his phone. The audio file of Elliot's confession displayed on the screen. Kael's breath faltered. The guard took a step forward, and then a voice from behind us. Dr. Kael. All three of us turned. Two sheriff's deputies stood in the doorway, badges glinting, hands resting near their holsters but not drawn. Behind them, Mr. Larkin, my neighbor, hat in hand. I called them, he said simply. Kael stiffened. This is a misunderstanding. Mr. Marsh is in crisis. No, the deputy said. We reviewed the report. We heard the recordings. This looks like a criminal case. Kael's facade crumbled. The guard stepped back. The second deputy moved to secure the office, blocking the exit. Maddox whispered, It's enough. We have enough. I felt my knees loosen, breath hitching, not from weakness, but release. A weight I had carried since Helen's last breath began to lift. The deputy turned to me. Mr. Marsh, you're safe now. Safe. A word I hadn't believed in months. Kael was escorted out, not in cuffs. Not yet, but flanked like a defendant whose verdict was already written in the lines of her face. She would fight it. She would deny it. But the paper trail, the recordings, the metadata, that was law, and I still knew how to build a case. Elliot and Kira would face consequences too. Not prison, maybe, but enough to stop them. Enough to force reflection. Redemption would be their burden to carry, not mine. Outside, the morning sun cut through the clouds, spilling onto the pavement like a promise. Maddox clapped a hand on my shoulder. For Helen, he said. For me, I answered. I wasn't a product. I wasn't an estate. I wasn't a diagnosis waiting to be assigned. I was something better. I was still here. And if you've been listening this far, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. It helps more than you know.